Before we go into planning the next level materials, we can also have a look at a very important function that we can use for mostly header material, but also for sub-assemblies. Anything that has a bill of material, well, it's called the order report. And this is order report for the elements. So you need to be careful which one you choose. You can start either from the independent requirements or the plan order. And if you want to see it for another one, then you put your mouse cursor on it. But I will choose from either this one or this one. The result will be the same. I'm just checking from the plan order of the 1st of April, what is the planning situation for the rest of the materials. So I click on the icon called order report. And it's, please note, there is also a transaction directly accessible, that's MD4C. But we will click, and without moving from MD04, we have the result showing up on the left. And the overview tree is actually what is showing up. This is something that you can tune. You can also make it look different if you want to see the messages before going into the details of each material. Here we see that we have a yellow for FP 101 because exception messages occur at the level below, and those messages are the one in red. It's only telling us that there is no coverage provided by the master plan, meaning that those materials, in fact, they have not been planned so far, so their situation is not up to date. They need to be planned, and that's what we will do now with MD02. So directly from this overview tree, you can see that we have selected this plan order 39628. This is the one that shows up here. It's very important to know where you are, which one you selected. So it's repeated here as the element from which you are looking, and this is the order report again for this element. So navigating from this overview tree, I can double click on FP102, and I see that I have what we call dependent requirements. These are coming from the from the plan order of FP101. If I look one up, I will see that this is coming from 39628, which is a plan order of FP101. This is called pegged requirements, meaning that from a level below, you are looking at the level above where the requirement is coming from. So this is another function, which is the one that you can access through MD09 transaction. It's called pegged requirements, and you have it also just next to the first icon we clicked for the order report. You see it here on the left, pegged requirement next to order report. Okay, so now I want to plan this FP102, and potentially I could also check the bill of material and see which are the levels below. But we will do an MRP single item multi-level, and that's MD02 transaction. And from there, all the components will be planned. And now we will, after that, we will go back to FP101 or FP102, and we will check how this order report is evolving. So I hide the overview tree, and from FP102, I'll just launch single item multi-level MRP, MD02. Again, I'm happy with the settings here, processing key, creating purchasing requisition or schedule line, creating MRP list, yes, planning mode, I delete and I recreate, and scheduling, I do take into account the routings and if there are any, and I do the capacity planning also. I always checked also plan unchanged components just in case to be sure that everything gets planned and up to date with one single run. So please check input parameters. That's what it says again. And we just press enter. And now we get the statistics results where it tells us how many materials got planned, which one have new exception, 2, 6 got planned. Now we have all the details of the parameters used for execution here. Now also database statistics is giving us a little bit about how many things were created or deleted. So based on what was existing before this run, the system has just updated the situation. It might have been deleting and recreating data. And the start of the planning run and the end of the planning run is the same because it took less than a very few seconds, in fact, to plan this list of components below the 102. So after that, I go back one step with the green arrow back, and I just have to refresh. And now I see that for this FP102, the MRP type was and is PD, so this is the one on which you can use MD02 as opposed to MD41 or 42 for the MPS type. And so it's still a material that is supposed to be produced, not purchased. And we can also see that it's going to storage location make. So this material has plan orders created for each of the dependent requirements. And they are taking into account the time that it takes if there is a routing. But in that case, we still have this routing missing. The 62 exception message is still showing up. And we have only basic dates taken into account. So now if I do also the order report from this one, I will see which potential components it got below. So I choose the first one again. You can see that it's 39631 showing up here. And it's all green now, no exception, no messages, no error messages, no yellow messages. We do have a material that is called RM raw material 101, RM101, repeated 3 times. And I will just double click to see what the situation is for this one. And I can see that, in fact, we do have several materials that are in fact taking into account this, requiring this RM101. So, for example, I have a purchase requisition to buy 5, and in fact, it's coming from 1, 3, and 1. So it's a sum of those 3 requirements from 3 different materials. But I don't see them showing up here, meaning that there must be something like a phantom in planning. This is something that we can actually check by going later on these materials and see the details that they have this setting either in the bill of material or in the material master. So I will go and look again from the FP101, which is the highest material. Before doing this, I will go to the MRP list. So MD06, I stay on FP102, and I go to MRP list. This is MD06 in that case, not MD46 like we've seen before. This is again a picture of what was done, actually just recently planned. So I see my material here with new exceptions also. And I can double click and see what the situation is for this one. So I've just looked at it, so it's okay. But you see the exact date also and time should be showed up. And it's the header title is different. So it's a MRP list. It's not the stock and requirement list that gets updated all the and refreshed all the time. So this is an actual picture of when we did the run. So you could also consider that you've looked at it, that everything is okay for you. So you just say process indicator on, and you don't have to go back to check. It's here in the list showing up as green, processed on today's date. Now, this is MD06. And the other thing that we can look at now again is the order report, but we will look at it from FP101 and see if we can have more information from top-down analysis. Okay, so now we actually see that FP101 is also requiring some other materials to be planned, and actually they are not. So we've done FP101 at its own level. We've done FP102 and the levels below and they went through phantoms to give us the requirements for the raw material. And now I see that trade parts, TR 101, 102, 103, and a non-stocked item also, they are requiring their own planning because so far they haven't been planned at all. So same message as before, the coverage is not provided. So in theory, what you need to do is either choose to do MD42 for this FP101 material, because MD41, sorry, because we did MD42 for single level. Now, if we do multi-level, we are sure that the MPS will take into account those components below. The bill of material will actually be exploded for FP101 and everything will be planned. So this was to show you the difference between MD42 single level and MD41 multi-level. In theory, you always want to do what's the quickest and what makes sense, but in that case, it was to show you the difference between the two transactions. So now I run MD41. You note that you could also, I go back after the results are being shown and I refresh. And if I do now an order report, everything gets green because those materials got planned also in the process. So if I check one, TR101, I do need to refresh. Remember always to refresh when you change from one material to another. And you see now that those materials, they have purchase requisitions in front of their dependent requirements. And this is because they are by parts. There are still parts that are planned using the PD type, but they are purchased, so that's why we now have purchase requisitions. Same for those three items, those trade parts. And I have a last one that is a bit different. And this is the non-stock item for which I have separate segments. We'll go into the details in another video, but this is the direct procurement segments because this is not stocked, so it will be purchased against the future production order that will be used and created from a plan order for this FP101. Okay, so the situation is now all materials have been planned. You could do this in one step or in several steps, depending on how you want to plan things and separate the processes. You could have a master production scheduling that takes place and needs to also be reviewed before management agrees on what is the actual production schedule to put in place in your plant. But then you can also consider that MPS could be run, let's say, once a week, and MRP less or more in terms of frequency to adapt to movements and consumptions.